Hi. I'm sure that you can tell that I am particularly happy today. And this is because, as you can see from the title, I'm going to be talking about how I passed my driving test. I have a lot of motivation for you if this is your first time here and you're trying to go for a driving test in the UK and you have doubts or worries. One thing I want you to know is that if I pass, then you can definitely pass. Hi guys, my name is Omotola aka Omoti, and this is your lifestyle channel. On this channel, we talk about different things ranging from lifestyle, faith, and mental well-being. One statement that my driving instructor mentioned and really resonated with me was that everybody is good at something, but some people are better at things than others are. And it was so true because tell me why I struggled so much. I struggled, I cried. You heard me right. I struggled a lot with my driving. And I know that there are a lot of videos that say pass your driving at once, do this, do that. While those are really cute, I just want to say that I did mine more than once, but here's the real story. Coming to the UK, one of the things that everybody expects you to do is after doing your opening your bank account, getting an accommodation, being on the electoral register, I think the next thing that most people would ask you about is your plans to drive. For me, because my husband was probably going to be driving the family, it wasn't something that was top on my mind. But every day as I commuted from home to work, which was approximately an hour and a half every day, it was even more than that because there were days that I had to drop off my child at the nursery. So let's just say at least 2 hours by bus. Every day, I kept reminding myself that no, I can't keep going through this. And honestly, it wouldn't have been half as bad if the weather was favorable. So I did this in the cold, in the rain, in the sun, in the different weathers of the UK. Sometimes I would forget my umbrella. Sometimes I'll take my umbrella and I don't need it. It was just a lot. Many times I would have to run. I became the running corporate girly. I was always running because sometimes I would assume the bus is no longer coming and then it comes. It was just a lot. And at some point, I had to turn my lemons into lemonade by doing productive things on my bus trips because they were that long. Yes. So I realized the need to get a car and to start driving. And I had passed my 1 year mark of being in the UK. So it was time to really take driving seriously. And at this point, what I did was do the first thing. I booked my theory test. And when I booked my theory test, it was, I think I booked it 3 months before time. And when I did that, it was my husband who booked it for me. So I didn't really keep the date to heart because I had other commitments. I was writing some other medical exams. I think I spoke about those exams in my channel. You can check out those videos. And it was just a week to the exams, and I realized that I had just 1 week. I had not prepared anything at all. And when I say anything, with all honesty, I'm telling you, I hadn't opened anything about the exams. I didn't even know what to expect. I didn't know that there was the theory part, there was the hazard perception. I didn't know. So what I did, I told my husband that, oh, let's move this test. And he goes, no, I think you can do it. I was like, I don't think I can do it. Anyway, to cut the long story short, but please don't try this at home. I decided to start practicing for the theory test. In I had approximately 2.5 days to practice. On Sunday, I thought I was going to be able to cancel, but I couldn't cancel any longer because my test was on a Tuesday. So I had to face the music and write the test anyway. I used the 4-in-1 app, and with that, I was able to cover a lot of grounds. I did a lot of mocks, and eventually, I wrote the exam on a Tuesday. In fact, I almost missed my time. I thought my time was at 6 p.m., only to figure out that it was at 3 p.m. So I had 3 hours short of studying. And in the midst of all this, I was going to work. I went to work on the Monday, and I went to church on the Sunday. So you can imagine how much time I had to prepare. But again, please don't be like me when you're preparing for your theory, because again, I said I was writing exams at that time, and I believe that my cognitive abilities were very high then. So it was easy for me to assimilate very fast, and I was able to succeed in the theory part of the exam. Now that the theory was done, it was time to move on to the practical aspect, which is what usually gives a lot of people problems. But again, different strokes for different folks. Some people have problems with the theory aspect and they ace the practicals, while some people it's the other way around. For me, I knew that I had some difficulties with orientation. For example, you can catch me calling left, right, and right, left. Yes, I'm one of those people that I could go somewhere 10 times and not really know where I'm going to. So at the back of my mind, I knew that I needed a lot of practice before I would eventually be a good driver in the UK. Backstory, I had driven in Nigeria, but we know how Nigerian driving is. Let's not talk about that for now. So when I decided to, when I passed my theory exams, this my husband again, thanks to him, he booked my practical exams. And when he booked it, I made up my mind that I was going to start practicing 3 months to the time so that I'll have ample time to write the exams or to sit the exams. Fortunately or unfortunately, I got an instructor who thought maybe I was like my husband, because he was the same person who prepared my husband. But my husband didn't need so many classes. He had just maybe one main class and then some practice just before his test, and then he passed. So he probably assumed that I was like my husband, and he cancelled on me so many times. But this is not to apportion blame or anything, because I like to take responsibility for whatever happens in my life. The only part that I blame myself for is not moving on to look for another instructor. So I stuck with him and I didn't have enough classes, and clearly I didn't know what I was doing. So I went for that test. I wanted to cancel again, but I couldn't cancel, and I went for that test and had three major faults and three minor faults. I was surprised because I didn't know anything and I still had three minors. The three major faults were exactly the same problem that I had, like the same problem three times. So I abandoned that and then went ahead with my other exams that I still had to do. Immediately I completed the exams, I said, okay, this time around, I'm going to get a good instructor that will be consistent. I don't mind if I have to pay, but I just wanted to pass my exams this time around. And so for me, I would say that this was my first attempt, because I honestly did not have up to I don't think I had more than 3 hours of practice the first time. And this is me. I don't even drive in the UK. I don't drive. I've always used public transport if my husband drives. So there was no way I could have practiced outside of the lessons. So I would count this as my first attempt. And at least it's my first attempt with my instructor. And the reason I'm coming out to do this video is because practice, practice indeed makes perfect. My instructor was diligent and I gave it to him. His drive and pass, and he genuinely wanted me to pass. Initially, when I met with him, because I had some anxieties from my previous instructor who was not really into the whole thing, it took me a few classes to kind of gain trust. And the backstory is that he also told me that at some point he wanted to end my classes just because I cried. Yes, I cried. I can't believe it, because I like to think that I'm a strong girl and resolute, but driving was getting me frustrated, and I was wondering why I couldn't just get it. I was making so many mistakes up until the last class. I was making so many mistakes, and I just felt frustrated at some point. I cried twice during my driving lessons. In total, I had about 20 lessons with my instructor. I had early morning lessons, somewhere 7 a.m., 8 a.m. in the cold. I would go out. I kept making the same mistakes over and over again. But one thing was that my instructor really wanted me to pass. He wanted me to pass, and I could hear it in his enthusiasm, his corrections. And I think that's one bit. I remember one of the times I told one of my friends that I'm still trying to see whether I could trust him. And I think trust is one of the essential things when it comes to getting an instructor for your driving. So, fast forward to my classes. Yes, I would go. We had 2 hour sessions. Initially, I thought 2 hour sessions were an overkill because I'm not even used to driving for 2 hours, not even 1 hour, not to talk of 2 hours. But my instructor insisted that 2 hours was ample time that we needed to understand and learn everything that I needed. Initially, I did not agree, but eventually, I saw the benefits. I even remember on one of the occasions I got back home and slept for 5 hours. I was so exhausted. I felt like an elephant had walked on me. Anyway, I then continued. I consistently went for the classes. I had only weekends because I work Monday to Friday. So weekends were the only times where I could have my lessons, and he would teach me about roundabouts, what to do at a junction, who had the priority, traffic lights, and lots of things. And eventually, I figured that the way he taught me made me understand things better. Remember that I said that left and right sometimes confuses me, front and back confuses me. So he was able to work on that. He had graphical representations of things. He used the maps to teach me. He was very patient, although sometimes, obviously, he scolded me and that made me feel bad. But I think that the turning point for me was the fact that I knew that I really needed this. That's one. And two, I saw that he wanted the best for me. So I needed to go through that process. And another thing I looked at was that I needed to learn as much as possible because beyond passing, you want to be a safe driver for yourself and for other people. It's not just about, oh, I passed my test without any practice. If that works for people, that's fine. But I think that adequate time of practice, it varies from person to person, but it is essential to know the rules in a particular country. Knowing it in theory was very different from practical because for me, I knew the theory. He always told me that when it comes to theory, you're really good, but this practical aspect of driving, it's just not working for you for now. And he meant it with all sincerity, which I liked. So again, I found out that learning and undergoing that process, it was like a refining process when it comes to driving. And I think that I'll be a safer driver by God's grace. So those were some of the things that I went through. And eventually on the test day, yes, you're going to be seeing my pictures soon. On the test day, it rained. I knew that there were different weathers. I had driven in fog, I had driven when it was slightly dark, I had driven in different situations, but it had never rained. So when it rained on my test day, my instructor was like, okay, it's a rainy day. One has to be very careful, but I believe in you, you can pass. So I told him that, well, I was born in the rain, superstition or not, I was born in the rain. I'm a rain baby, I'm a June baby. So it means that it's a sign of good luck. And I liked that mindset because I believe that even though I was not the strongest candidate, I had that self belief. I had doubt, to be honest, but I also had that self belief that I would pass based on all the work that my instructor had put in. And I really wanted to make him proud. I knew that he had put in a lot of effort. Anyway, when I got to the test center, I tried to read the number plates of cars because that's the first part of your test. So when you arrive at the test center, you have to read the number plate. So my instructor prepped me on all of that and I was able to read them. But when my examiner came, she took me out. She was a Muslim lady, very kind. She took me out and she asked me to read a number plate. Guys, guess what? I couldn't see it. I genuinely could not see it. And I saw the fear on her face like, you can't write your test. You can't do your test today if you can't read this number plate. So she gave me another chance. I cleaned my glasses. Yeah, that's another thing. Make sure you clean your glasses if you wear glasses. I cleaned my glasses and I was able to read the number plate, thankfully. And as the test went on, my instructor had already told me that the test would be about 30 to 35 minutes. But the test went on and on and on. It was about 50 minutes in total. I was exhausted. But I then realized that I had made some mistakes, and at some point, I already knew that I had failed the test. Although I was hopeful, but I was like, oh, there's no way, there's definitely no way. I've made these mistakes, I've made these errors, and I'm not going to pass the test. And I was like, oh, thankfully, my instructor already booked an extra, he already booked a backup date for me from one of his other students. To cut the long story short, I did the maneuvers. I was asked to do a reverse parking 2 car lengths. I was able to do that because my instructor had taught me how to do that over and over again, and I perfected it. And then she asked me to stop on the left about thrice, which I was able to do. I did a lot of roundabouts. Yes, and for those that are interested, I did my test in Gareth Green in Birmingham, and it has lots of roundabouts, road markings, and those things are very important. So I did all of those. I made a few mistakes here and there, which I knew, and I thought, my God, some of these mistakes might have been major, but I think I catastrophized the whole situation. Anyway, and then when I got back to the test center, my instructor was there eagerly waiting for the response. I was there, my heart was pounding, but I just kind of thought in my mind that I had failed. So the examiner asked me, would you want your instructor to be there when I give you the feedback? I was like, okay, now that she wants my instructor to be there, it means that I've obviously goofed. And yes, I said yes, I certainly want them to be there so they can know areas to improve on. Okay. And I think that I was ready to hear unfortunately because there are two phrases that you hear in Britain. Unfortunately, you already know, or I am pleased, or congratulations. And my mind was already processing, unfortunately. In fact, I started thinking about all the errors that I made while driving that day. I even thought about the small talk that my examiner was trying to infuse into the whole thing. She was asking me, do you have anything nice to do after? I said, oh, well, it depends on the outcome. She asked me, oh, what do you do? I said, I'm a psychiatrist. She's like, oh, interesting. Is this your first test? I was like, no, it's my second. She's like, oh, not bad. I was like, oh my God, I have failed. Then somehow I was just in another world, and she goes, I am pleased. Then I turned to her like, okay, to announce to you that you've passed. Oh my God, guys. I hugged my examiner. My examiner is a male and he's a Muslim. I hugged him. I'm so sorry, but it wasn't intentional. I was just very excited. I had to apologize to him after, and he was like, oh no, that he knows that Nigerians and some Asians can be very expressive when it comes to passing their test. He was genuinely happy for me. He celebrated me. My examiner too was happy. She gave me the certificate, and I'm really grateful. I'm happy that I had to go through this process. And even though there are lots of varying opinions about practice, I believe that practice makes perfect. And if you're able to get the right instructor, you don't have to have as many hours as I did. I had 20 hours. Some people may need 10 hours, which is fine. But practice is always good because my first test, I was confident, but I failed. But my second test, which I take as my own first test because that's when I practiced, I was scared. I did it scared, but I knew the fundamental things and I passed. So, yeah, if you're like me and you're about to write your test, if I can pass, trust me, you can. And remember that we all struggle with different things. And if this is one thing you struggle with, just get an instructor that understands you, that can explain things slowly and can explain things in a way that you understand. And you'll be fine. Let me know if you want any other tips on how to pass your driving test in the UK. Ciao, ciao, guys. Bye. Thank you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Bye bye.